My name is Claire Dawson, and I was 43 when the funeral director pulled me aside after my mother's service and showed me a bill my husband swore he had already paid. The last guests were drifting through the glass doors behind me. My daughter, Emily, was standing near the parking lot with her arms wrapped around my aunt. White lilies crowded the room, their perfume so thick it made every breath feel sweet and wrong. I was gathering the cards people had left beside my mother's photograph when Mr. Bell approached me. "Mrs. Dawson, could I speak with you alone?" His voice was gentle, but his eyes were not. They carried the careful look people use when they already know they are about to add weight to someone who can barely stand. I thought he wanted me to sign for my mother's jewelry, or perhaps return the small silver cross she had worn when the paramedics brought her to the hospital. Instead, he closed the office door, pulled out a chair, and placed 2 sheets of paper on his desk. The first was an unpaid invoice. The second was a refund authorization form. My name was printed at the top. My signature was written at the bottom, only I had never signed it. Mr. Bell folded his hands. "Your husband paid the deposit. The rest of the service was charged against your mother's prepaid burial account." I stared at him. My husband told me he paid everything. Mr. Bell lowered his voice even though we were already alone. "Your mother's account covered the funeral, with a substantial amount remaining. Your husband asked us to issue that balance directly to him." "How much?" He hesitated. $18,700. For a few seconds, the numbers did not connect to meaning. They floated in front of me like something from a payroll report at work, figures that belonged to another woman's life. Then I looked down at the signature again. My husband had spent 3 days telling relatives that he paid for my mother's funeral because I was too broken to manage money. He had accepted their praise. He had let my aunt hug him and say Margaret would have been grateful. He had stood beside me at the graveside with one hand at my back and the other holding an umbrella over my head. And while everyone was thanking him, he had been trying to take the money my mother left behind. Welcome back to Hush and Tell Stories. Before I tell you what was inside the metal box my mother hid from my husband, tell me this in the comments. Could you stay calm if someone used your grief to steal from you? And if stories about quiet truth and family betrayal speak to you, subscribe and stay with me. 3 days before Mr. Bell pulled me into that office, I still believed my marriage was strained but solid. Nathan and I had been married 17 years. We had one daughter, Emily, who was 16. I worked as a payroll coordinator for a regional construction company outside Columbus, Ohio. Nathan managed commercial accounts for an office supply distributor. The week my mother died began on a Tuesday morning. I was at work reviewing overtime entries when Emily called me from school. "Mom, Grandma isn't answering." My mother was supposed to pick her up for a dentist appointment. She was never late. She was never unreachable. I called the florist shop beneath her apartment. The owner, Marlene, climbed the back stairs with her spare key and found my mother on the kitchen floor. The stroke was severe. By the time I reached the hospital, she was unconscious. Nathan met me there an hour later. Emily sat between us in the waiting room, gripping my hand so tightly our fingers ached. For 2 days, I lived under fluorescent lights. Doctors explained swelling, damage, percentages, and decisions. Their voices were kind and precise. I heard every word and understood none of it. My mother had written clear medical directives. She did not want prolonged intervention if there was no meaningful chance of recovery. On Thursday night, the neurologist told me there would not be one. My mother died Friday morning with Emily and me beside her. Nathan stood near the window. Afterward, he handled the phone calls. I was grateful. Grief reduced me to a sequence of necessary movements. Sign this, call that person, choose address, find a photograph, answer a question. I had never arranged a funeral. I did not know what flowers cost, what burial permits required, or whether my mother wanted hymns. The service was beautiful. Emily read a paragraph from one of her grandmother's favorite novels. My Aunt Ruth spoke about the year my mother organized a winter coat drive at the library and stored 80 donated coats in her living room. Nathan stood near the guest book and told anyone who asked that he was handling the expenses. I didn't want Claire worrying about money. he said. My cousin Daniel squeezed his shoulder. You did right by Margaret. My aunt hugged him. Even I looked at him with gratitude. I thought my mother's death had called forward the best part of my husband. Instead, it had revealed the part he had hidden most carefully. In Mr. Bell's office after the service, I forced myself to look at each document. The unpaid invoice was not actually for the full funeral. It showed a remaining administrative balance of $940 because Nathan's deposit and my mother's prepaid plan had not been fully reconciled. Mr. Bell explained that my mother opened the plan 12 years earlier. She began with a basic package, he said. Then she made additional deposits over time. He pulled out a ledger. Some months she paid $50, some months $20. One December she paid $10. I recognized the rhythm of her life in those numbers. She added more after tax refunds, less around Christmas, nothing during the month she had her furnace repaired. My mother had built her own funeral protection in tiny pieces, so I would not have to carry the cost. The account totaled more than the service required. After all final charges, $18,700 remained. My mother had named me as beneficiary. Mr. Bell showed me the original designation. My full legal name was typed on the line. Claire Elizabeth Dawson. Below it was my mother's signature, dated 7 years earlier. Then he showed me the authorization Nathan submitted. It claimed I had appointed my husband to manage the account and receive any excess funds. The signature looked enough like mine to pass a casual glance, but the capital C was wrong. I looped mine from the bottom. Whoever signed this started at the top. When did he give you this? I asked. The morning before the service. Did you see me sign it? No. Did anyone? He said you completed it at home. I swallowed. Has the refund been sent? No. Our compliance clerk flagged the beneficiary change because it came so close to the service date. We requested additional verification. That delay was the only reason the money was still there. Mr. Bell apologized repeatedly. I stopped him. You did not forge my name. He nodded once, then made copies of everything I requested. The original beneficiary form, the payment history, Nathan's deposit receipt, the refund request, the remaining invoice, and the identification Nathan provided. Before I left, he said something that tightened the fear in my chest. Your husband called 4 times asking whether we could release the funds before today. Before the funeral? Yes. That was the moment I knew this was not confusion. He had not stumbled upon the extra money and made a poor decision. He had been waiting for it. I placed the copies inside a large cream envelope and tucked it under my coat. When I stepped outside, Nathan was standing beside our car, accepting condolences from 2 of his coworkers. He looked composed, reliable, generous. He opened my door for me. What did Bell want? He asked once we were driving. I watched the city slide past my window. He said there was paperwork. Nathan nodded as if bored. Probably wanted to thank me for settling everything quickly. I turned slightly toward him. How much did the funeral cost? His fingers tightened around the steering wheel. Just under $15,000. The actual total was a little over 12. And you paid it from where? Our emergency savings. I looked forward again. Was there any prepaid plan? There was a pause, not long, maybe 2 seconds. But after 17 years, I knew the difference between Nathan thinking and Nathan editing. Your mother mentioned some little plan years ago, he said. It barely covered the flowers. I handled the real expense. I pressed my hand against the envelope beneath my coat. He had lied 3 times in less than a minute. The next morning, Emily came into my bedroom before Nathan woke. Her face was pale. Mom, I need to tell you something. She closed the door. She was holding a small brass key. Grandma gave me this. When? About 2 weeks ago. She sat on the edge of the bed and began twisting the key between her fingers. She gave me a box. She said if anything happened to her, I had to make sure you opened it without Dad. My chest tightened. Where is it? In my closet. Why didn't you tell me? Emily's eyes filled. I forgot at the hospital. Then the funeral happened. I thought maybe Grandma was just being dramatic, and I didn't want Dad to get mad. I took her face in my hands. You did nothing wrong. We waited until Nathan left to pick up food for visiting relatives. Then Emily pulled a scratched gray metal box from beneath a stack of winter blankets. It was the kind of box people used for birth certificates and insurance documents. One corner was dented. My mother's handwriting appeared on a strip of masking tape across the top. For CLAIRE. Emily inserted the key. Inside were folders arranged with my mother's usual precision. Funeral plan, bank records, Nathan, will, letter for Claire. I stared at the folder B. Barring my husband's name, my hands would not move. Emily sat beside me on the floor. Do you want me to leave? No, I opened it. The first page was a handwritten list of dates and amounts: $4,000, $6,000, $3,500, $2,000, $8,500. $24,000 total. Behind the list were copies of checks written to Nathan. Then came repayment agreements. Each one carried his signature. The first loan was supposedly for a roof repair. We had never repaired our roof that year. The second was described as temporary business financing. The third said household emergency. The fourth said consolidation. My mother had written notes besides several payments. January 18th. Nathan says Claire does not know. Promised full repayment by June. March 2nd. Missed payment. Says Riverbend opening delayed. May 11th. Told him no further money. September 6th. Nathan asked me not to mention loan to Claire because it would damage trust. The last note was dated 8 months before her death. Nathan said Claire does not need to know unless I fail to pay. I told him failure is not the only reason a wife deserves the truth. He had repaid less than $4,000. The final payment was almost 2 years old. Emily read over my shoulder. Dad borrowed money from Grandma? Yes. For what? I don't know yet. But I did. Riverbend hospitality, the restaurant transfers, the hidden card, the funeral refund. The pieces were not scattered anymore. They formed a path. My mother had known Nathan was in financial trouble. She had given him chances to fix it. She had kept quiet to protect my marriage. And Nathan had repaid her silence by attempting to take the money she left for me. I opened the funeral folder. Inside was a copy of the prepaid account, the same beneficiary form Mr. Bell showed me, annual statements, and a handwritten list of every deposit. At the bottom, my mother had written, remaining funds for Emily's education if Claire agrees. Emily covered her mouth. She was saving for me. She was protecting both of us. The will folder contained an updated will naming me executor and leaving her modest estate to me, with a request that I support Emily's education. Then I opened the letter. The envelope said, "My darling Claire." I read it aloud because I could not bear to hold the words alone. My mother wrote that she loved me. She wrote that she was proud of the life I built, proud of the mother I became, and sorry she had kept Nathan's loans secret. She explained that he came to her embarrassed and desperate. At first, she believed helping him would protect our family. Then his explanations changed. The roof money became business money. The business money became debt money. Whenever she asked for repayment, he blamed timing, market conditions, family pressure, or me. She wrote, "Trusting someone is not foolish. Refusing to see the truth after it is placed in your hands is where the danger begins." I stopped reading. Emily leaned her head against my shoulder. After a minute, I continued. My mother said she did not want me to feel ashamed for defending my husband. She knew how hard I had worked to create the stable family she could not give me after my father left. Then came the sentence that broke me. I stayed quiet because I wanted to give Nathan the chance to become the man you believed he was. I kept records because protecting his image could never matter more than protecting you. At the end, she asked me to use whatever remained from the funeral account for Emily's education. There was no anger in the letter. No demand that I leave Nathan. No satisfaction in being right, only preparation. My mother had prepared for the possibility that I would need proof more than I needed advice. I folded the letter and held it against my chest. Then Emily said, "Mom, there's something else." She told me that while we were at the hospital during my mother's final night, Nathan left for nearly 2 hours. I remembered. He said he went home to feed the dog and shower. Emily had seen him return carrying a white plastic grocery bag. He put it in the trunk before he came inside, she said. I thought it was clothes. That afternoon, I called Mr. Bell. I am formally disputing the authorization, I said. Do not release any money. He transferred me to the compliance department. They sent forms through secure email. I completed them immediately and attached a copy of my driver's license and genuine signature samples. Then I called an estate attorney named Dana Whitaker. My company had used her firm for probate workshops, and I remembered her because she explained complicated things without making people feel foolish. She saw me the next morning. Dana was in her early 50s with silver-streaked hair and a calm voice. She placed the funeral documents, bank statements, loan agreements, and photographs into separate piles. When she reached the forged authorization, she looked at me. Did you sign this? No. Did you authorize Nathan verbally? No. Did he have any power of attorney for you or your mother? No. She placed a yellow tab beside the signature. Then we treat it as disputed. We do not exaggerate. We do not accuse beyond the documents. We preserve everything. I told her I wanted to confront him. You will, she said, but not before the refund is frozen and your accounts are secure. That sentence saved me from acting too soon. I changed the password on my personal bank account. I opened a new account in my name only and redirected my paycheck. I checked my credit report. There were no unknown accounts in my name, but Dana advised me to place a fraud alert anyway. I copied every document in the metal box. Aunt Ruth signed the estate inventory as witness. We changed the lock on my mother's apartment because Nathan had previously been given a spare key for emergencies. I did not change the locks at my own house yet. Dana warned me that removing Nathan from the marital home without legal advice could complicate matters. So I returned to the same house and slept beside a man I knew had forged my signature. For 2 nights, I barely slept. Nathan acted almost normal. He answered condolence messages from relatives, returned to work for a few hours, and complained that the house was too crowded with flowers. Once, while I stood at the kitchen sink, he said, "Your aunt keeps looking at me strangely." I dried my hands. She buried her sister. That isn't what I mean. What do you mean? He watched me for a second, measuring. Nothing. His suspicion had begun, but he still believed grief explained my distance. On the 3rd evening after the funeral, he announced that he had invited family for dinner. I think everyone needs one normal meal, he said. Ruth, Daniel, Valerie, maybe Marlene if she wants to come. I looked up from the condolence cards I was sorting. You invited people here. I already ordered food. You don't have to cook. His voice carried the same patient authority he had used at the funeral home. Then he added, "It will be good for them to see that you're holding together." I almost asked who the performance was for. Instead, I said, "That's thoughtful." He relaxed. Nathan had always mistaken my calm for agreement. Before the guests arrived, I placed the cream funeral home envelope inside a larger black portfolio. I added copies of the beneficiary form, payment ledger, deposit receipt, bank statements, loan agreements, and my mother's handwritten notes. I kept the original metal box locked in Dana's office. I also asked Aunt Ruth and Daniel to come 20 minutes early. They arrived together. Nathan was upstairs changing his shirt. I took them into the laundry room and closed the door. "I need you to listen tonight," I said. "Please don't interrupt until I ask you to." Aunt Ruth searched my face. "What happened?" I showed her the funeral invoice and Nathan's refund request. She read the first page, then the second. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Daniel looked over her shoulder. "That's your signature." "It is supposed to be. You didn't sign it." "No." I showed them the beneficiary form, then the loan agreements. Aunt Ruth sat on the washing machine lid because her knees seemed to give way. Margaret loaned him $24,000. Yes. Did you know? No. Daniel turned toward the door. "I'm going to ask him right now." I caught his arm. "No, He invited everyone because he wants to tell the story again. Let him. Aunt Ruth looked at me with tears in her eyes. Claire, are you sure you want to do this in front of everyone? I didn't choose the audience. He did. That was the truth. If Nathan had confessed privately, I might have handled the first conversation privately. But he had built his lie in public. He had used my mother's funeral to improve his image with the family. I was not going to protect that image at the cost of the truth. Valerie arrived with a bottle of wine and a lemon cake. She was Nathan's older sister, and she had always viewed him as the dependable one in their family. Their father had been unreliable, so Nathan learned young that being useful earned praise. I understood where some of his control came from. Understanding it no longer excused what he had done. Marlene came too, carrying a small potted violet from the florist shop. We sat around the dining table with containers of roasted chicken, potatoes, green beans, and salad between us. Emily remained quiet beside me. Nathan poured wine for the adults. At first, the conversation stayed on my mother. Marlene told a story about the time Margaret accidentally locked herself out of the apartment in slippers during a snowstorm. Daniel remembered how she mailed him $5 every birthday, even after he turned 30. People laughed. For several minutes, I almost forgot why the port. Folio sat against my chair, then Valerie raised her glass. To Margaret, she said, and to Nathan for stepping up when Claire needed him. Nathan gave a small, modest shake of his head. It was nothing. Aunt Ruth lowered her eyes. Valerie continued. No, it wasn't. Funerals are expensive. Not everyone would take that on without making a production of it. Nathan glanced at me. I didn't want Claire dealing with bills. She was too shattered to manage what dignity costs. That was when I knew he would never tell me on his own. He was not merely hiding what he had done. He was enjoying the version of himself the lie created. I set down my fork. How much did dignity cost, Nathan? The room quieted. He smiled faintly as if I had asked an unnecessary question. We don't need to discuss that tonight. You've discussed it with almost everyone here. Valerie shifted in her chair. Claire, he was trying to help. I know what he said he was trying to do. Nathan's expression hardened at the edges. Why are you doing this now? I reached for the black portfolio. Because you chose now to tell everyone again that you paid my mother's funeral. I removed the final invoice and laid it on the table. Nathan looked at it. For the first time that evening, his face lost color. I turned the page toward Valerie. The funeral cost $12,240. Nathan paid a $2,000 deposit. Valerie frowned. That still means he paid part of it. Yes, part. Nathan leaned back. The funeral home mixed up the accounting. No, they didn't. I placed the payment ledger beside the invoice. My mother opened a prepaid burial account 12 years ago. She paid into it month after month so I would never have to worry about her funeral. Marlene covered her mouth. She used to bring envelopes downstairs and ask me to remind her to mail them. Nathan said that account was not enough. I looked at him. It paid every legitimate funeral expense and left $18,700. No one moved. Valerie blinked. What remaining money? I placed my mother's beneficiary designation on the table. This money, my mother named me as beneficiary. Nathan pushed his chair back an inch. Claire, this is estate business. We should talk privately. We are discussing exactly what you discussed publicly. I removed the refund authorization. Mr. Bell showed me this after the funeral. I placed it directly in front of Nathan. Why is my signature on a document I never signed? The silence changed. Before, people had been confused. Now they understood there was a shape to the danger. Nathan stared at the page, then he looked at me. You signed several forms that week. You were upset. You may not remember. My voice remained level. I remember every form I signed. I did not sign this one. It was part of the packet. No, it was submitted separately the morning before the service. His jaw tightened. You are relying on a funeral director who is trying to cover his own mistake. Mr. Bell was not in the room to defend himself, but the documents did not need his voice. I placed the copy of Nathan's identification beside the authorization. You gave them your driver's license. You called 4 times asking for the refund to be released before the funeral. Valerie turned toward him. Is that true? Nathan ignored her. He looked at me with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Not disbelief that I had found out, disbelief that I had spoken. Where did you get all this? From the people you gave it to? He reached for the authorization. Aunt Ruth put her hand over the page. Don't touch it. Nathan stared at her. She had never spoken to him that way. I opened the next section of the portfolio. There is more. Claire, he warned. It was the first time he used my name like a threat. I removed the loan agreements. One by one, I placed them on the table. 4,000, 6,000, 3,500, 2,000, 8,500. Nathan's signatures sat beneath repayment schedules he had ignored. I turned the first page toward him. Were you planning to tell me you owed my mother $24,000 before or after you forged my name to take $18,700 more? Valerie whispered. Nathan? He rubbed both hands over his face. Then he stood. This is not what you think. Daniel let out a humorless laugh. That line won't work when your signature is on every page. Nathan pointed toward the documents. Margaret gave me that money willingly. I know the original loans may have been voluntary, I said. I also know you signed repayment agreements. She knew the restaurant needed time. You told me you never invested in the restaurant. That was because you would have panicked. I work in payroll. I understand numbers. You understand paychecks, he snapped. You don't understand business risk. There it was, even with his forgery on the table. He still needed me to be the smaller person in the room. I took out the bank records. These transfers came from our joint account. His eyes moved toward them. You went through my finances. Our finances? Not every decision requires your permission. $11,000 from our household account did. He gave a short, bitter laugh. This is exactly why I did not tell you. You turn every difficult decision into an audit. My mother's warning returned to me. A man who keeps telling you not to count is usually afraid of what you'll find. Nathan looked around the table, searching for someone who still recognized his version of events. His eyes landed on Valerie. I was under pressure. Marcus was about to lose everything. If the restaurant closed, the investment was gone. Valerie said slowly, so you took Margaret's funeral money? I didn't take it. You requested it. It had not been released. Because they stopped you, Daniel said. Nathan's voice rose. It was going to belong to Claire anyway. I was moving it temporarily. I felt something inside me become still. Moving it early is not stealing from me. He looked directly at me. That is not what I said. It is exactly what you said. I would have replaced it. With what? He opened his mouth. No answer came. I continued. You owed my mother $20,000 after the small payments you made. You had $18,000 on a hidden credit card. You transferred $11,000 from our account. What money were you going to use to replace $18,700? His face changed when I mentioned the credit card. That was the proof he had not expected me to find. You checked my credit? I checked mine. Then I checked every account I am legally entitled to review. You had no right to dig through my private. Private debt is still debt. A forged signature is still forgery. A funeral account is still my mother's money. He turned toward the hallway. We are not doing this in front of Emily. Emily spoke for the first time. You searched Grandma's apartment. Nathan stopped. He looked at her. What? You left the hospital and went to her apartment. I went home. No, you didn't. Her voice trembled, but she kept going. You came back with a bag and put it in the trunk. Grandma gave me her metal box because she said you might look for it. Nathan's face emptied. That reaction told me more than denial would have. I placed the photographs of the damaged desk drawer on the table. The burial file was missing. He stared at Emily. Your grandmother should never have involved you in adult problems. Emily flinched. I moved my chair slightly closer to her. My mother involved her because she did not trust you. Nathan turned back to me. She turned you against me from beyond the grave. The sentence hung in the room. It was so cruel, so specific, and so completely him that the last part of me still searching for a gentler explanation finally stopped. "My mother didn't turn me against you," I said. "She left records because she knew you would lie." He grabbed his keys from the counter. Valerie stood. "Nathan, don't leave." He pointed at me. "You wanted this. You wanted an audience." "No," I said. "You wanted the audience. I brought the truth." He walked out. The front door slammed. No one spoke for several seconds. Then Valerie began collecting the documents as if tidying them could repair something. "This should have been handled privately." I looked at her. "Which part?" "All of it." Nathan was under pressure. He forged my signature. He made a terrible decision. He made a series of decisions. He borrowed from my mother. He stopped repaying her. He searched her apartment while she was dying. He lied about paying for her funeral. He asked for the refund 4 times. Then he sat here and accepted praise. Valerie's eyes filled with tears. "He is my brother, and he is my husband." She looked away. Aunt Ruth asked the question I had been carrying since Mr. Bell's office. If Claire had not been pulled aside, when was Nathan going to tell her? No one answered. Nathan did not come home that night. He sent one message shortly after midnight. "I need space. Do not make any more decisions while emotional." I showed it to Dana the next morning. She read it twice. "People who benefited from your silence often call your first boundary emotional." She advised me not to argue by text. I replied only, "All communication about the funeral account and estate should go through counsel. We need to discuss the marriage with a mediator present." He called 6 times. I did not answer. On the 7th call, he left a voicemail. "Claire, this is getting out of control. I know you are grieving, but you are letting your mother's suspicions become more important than 17 years of marriage." I saved the recording. Dana referred me to a divorce attorney in her office, Melissa Grant. I had not planned to say the word divorce so quickly. Part of me still expected Nathan to return with an explanation large enough to cover what he had done. But explanations do not erase signatures. Desperation may explain why someone reaches for money. It does not explain why they steal your name to take it. Melissa walked me through the immediate steps. We documented the accounts. We preserved the credit reports. We identified which debts were joint and which appeared to be Nathan's alone. We filed for temporary financial restraints so neither of us could move significant marital assets while the case was reviewed. I did not empty our accounts. I did not cancel his insurance. I did not try to punish him. I protected my paycheck, Emily's education account, and the records. 2 weeks after the funeral, Nathan requested a mediated meeting. Melissa attended with me. Nathan arrived with an attorney and a folder of financial projections. He looked tired. His shirt was wrinkled, which was unusual for him. For a moment, seeing him that way hurt. 17 years does not vanish because the truth arrives. The person who betrayed you is still the person who held your hand during labor, repaired the porch railing, and drove through a snowstorm to pick you up when your car broke down. That is why betrayal is painful. It does not erase every good memory. It poisons your confidence in what those memories meant. The mediator asked Nathan to explain his position. He cleared his throat. I acknowledged that I requested the funeral refund. His attorney looked down. Nathan continued. I was dealing with a temporary liquidity issue connected to a business investment. I believed the funds would ultimately belong to Claire, and I intended to replace them before they were needed. The mediator asked, "Did Claire authorize you to receive them?" Nathan paused. She was not in a state to discuss finances. That was not the question. No. Did she sign the authorization? Another pause. No. The word was quiet. It still changed the room. I had spent weeks looking at documents, but hearing him admit it made the betrayal feel newly real. Nathan turned toward me. I was desperate. "I believe you." His expression softened, as if he thought belief meant forgiveness. Then I said, "Desperation explains why the money tempted you. It does not explain why my consent stopped mattering." He pressed his lips together. "The money was going to be yours. Would you have forged my name if you believed I would agree? He looked down. That was my answer. Nathan slid a proposal across the table. He offered to sign a repayment agreement with my mother's estate. He would sell his remaining interest in the restaurant, liquidate a small investment account, and make monthly payments for the balance. In return, he wanted me to pause the divorce. I can fix the money, he said, but I can't fix this if you make the separation permanent. I read the proposal, then I placed it back on the table. Repayment is a financial obligation. It is not proof that the marriage can be repaired. We have 17 years together. Yes, we have a daughter. Yes, you are willing to throw that away? I looked at him for a long moment. I did not forge your name. I did not search your mother's apartment. I did not take money from someone who trusted me. I did not create this ending. His face tightened. So that's it? No, that is not it. There will be disclosures, repayment, parenting decisions, and years of helping Emily understand why her father did what he did. This is not one dramatic ending. It is a consequence. Nathan signed the estate repayment agreement that afternoon. After the funeral funds were released to the estate, I followed my mother's request. I placed most of the money into a protected education account for Emily. The exact deposit was $16,000 after final estate expenses connected to the account. I showed Emily the confirmation. This is from Grandma, I said. She touched the page. I wish she could see it. I think she knew exactly what she was building. With part of the remaining money, we purchased a memorial bench outside the community center where my mother volunteered after retiring from the library. The plaque read, Margarettellis. She made room for people. Aunt Ruth chose the words. The bench faced a small playground and a row of maple trees. On the day it was installed, Emily and I sat there after a grief support event. Children ran across the grass. Someone inside the community center was stacking chairs. It was an ordinary afternoon, which somehow made the loss feel sharper. Emily traced the edge of the plaque. Do you regret trusting Dad? I thought carefully before answering. I regret defending him after some warning signs became clear. That isn't what I asked. No, I don't regret believing my marriage was real. She looked at me. Why not? Because trusting someone who promised to love you is not sham. The shame belongs to the person who uses that trust. She leaned against me. I don't know if I'll forgive him. You don't have to decide that now. Do you? I may forgive parts of what happened someday. That does not mean I will return to the life that allowed it. Nathan and I eventually agreed on a separation arrangement and parenting plan. Emily began seeing him in short, structured visits after several months. I did not pressure her to be affectionate. I did not speak badly about him during those visits. I also did not rewrite the truth to make him comfortable. Nathan apologized to her once. She told me afterward that he said, I made financial mistakes because I was trying to protect the family. Emily answered, You protected yourself from telling us. She was 16, and she understood the center of it better than many adults. The divorce became final 14 months after my mother's funeral. There was no celebration. I signed the last page in Melissa's office, walked to my car, and cried for 20 minutes. Then I drove home and made dinner with Emily. Loss can be correct and still be loss. A month later, I returned to the funeral home. Mr. Bell met me in the same office where he had placed the invoice and forged authorization on his desk. The room looked smaller than I remembered. He stood when I entered. Mrs. Dawson, I have thought about you often. I came to thank you. He looked uncomfortable. I'm sorry I had to approach you that day. I know the timing was painful. You didn't choose the timing. I still worried that I made the day worse. I looked at the desk. For months, I had replayed that moment as the instant my marriage cracked open. But that was not accurate. Nathan's choices had created the crack long before I saw it. Mr. Bell had simply turned on the light. You didn't make that day worse, I told him. You stopped the lie from following me home. His eyes filled. He nodded once. When I left the funeral home, the afternoon sun was bright enough to make me squint. I stood beside my car and thought about the story Nathan had wanted everyone to remember. He wanted to be the man who stepped forward. The man who paid the bill. The man who protected a grieving wife from decisions she could not handle. But my mother had already paid for everything. She paid in small monthly deposits. She paid by saving records. She paid by enduring Nathan's excuses without surrendering the truth. She paid by trusting Emily with a key. And in the final lesson she ever gave me, she showed me that love does not ask you to look away from evidence. Love makes sure you can survive what the evidence reveals. Before you go, tell me this. Could you rebuild trust after someone forged your name during your mother's funeral, or would that be the moment the marriage ended for you? And tell me your name and the city you're watching from. I want to know where this story found you.